Well, good morning, everyone. Here we are in 2024, and today what we'd like to do is talk a little bit about strategies that we might be able to implement in 24 that include technology and some other things. So to kind of kick us off this morning, I think I'm going to defer to Ron and have him kind of fill in the gaps a little bit.
Okay, sure. Well, I think that we're each picking a strategy, and I think that the best strategy, which includes a little bit of technology for 2024, is really focusing on customers. And the technology part of focusing on customers would include something like a CRM, a customer relationship management tool. There are several of them out there. There are big ones like HubSpot, and then there are a lot of others that you can choose. You can get a free one from HubSpot, by the way, but it doesn't have a lot of the communication features. Or you can go to something like Zoho, which has a CRM as well. So there are a lot of opportunities. The question is, well, how do you do that, and why is it important? We've spoken on this program before about the advantages that customer relationships have over other businesses. And I think last time we talked a little bit about John talked a little bit about large corporations just rolling over small business. And that's true because of the nature of how niche markets work and how they work over time as they develop from very small to very large markets. And we won't be able to talk about that specifically today. But the competitive advantage there is that if you have a relationship, you've got an opportunity to actually compete with the big guys based on trust, authenticity, hopefully differentiation, and them understanding differentiation. That's generally not debated anymore. When I started talking about relationships, literally back in 1989 or 90, bless you.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
That people would look at me like, what are you talking about? I don't want a relationship with a customer. Well, that debate's over. But it wasn't when I started talking about it 30 years ago. So now that is over, the question is, well, how do you implement it? It is not easy to do. Now, if you're a little teeny insurance guy and you need to have, say 100 good commercial accounts to make a really good living, you can do that just on your own, shaking hands, going to chamber meetings, association meetings, kind of getting out and about and learning to meet people and just being a decent person. You can really develop relationships. And then over time, as you work with someone, particularly as something as intimate as insurance, you get to know their needs and their family, So that kind of a relationship has been done for hundreds of years and will continue to be done for many, many years. However, supplementing that kind of a relationship with a tool that extends your communication capabilities. If there are things in your particular industry, we'll use that industry, the insurance business, that are important for your customers to know, then you don't have to call every one of them up and say, oh, by the way, your fire insurance is going to go up this year because we're having forest fires, or you're in a, like some of us, you're in a high fire danger area. And so, those kinds of things can be done proactively. And you can develop a relationship simply because you're giving them the information they need before or when they need it. So by utilizing something as simple as email, you can develop strategies for better informing your customers. But for people who are trying to grow their business and they have, they're in the kind of a business that it takes thousands of customers in order to be able to maintain their business, using a customer relationship strategy where you are focused on support as a separate item, support of a product, how to maintain it, how to clean it, etc., how to use it. On service, why did it break down and how do I fix it? What do I have to do to to make this work a little bit better, as well as content knowledge about that product and associated products that you might be able to sell to help them out. Those are all content pieces that help cement your relationship, really. So it's about communication and automated communications. Now there are pieces that go beyond that. So this year I'm recommending that if you are not familiar with CRMs, get familiar, understand what they're like, how they work. You can try free ones. HubSpot is one. We can just download it and experiment with it a little bit and understand it. And of course, you can go to YouTube and you can look up all kinds of help, very specific help on how to better use CRM packages, how to do communications, and your industry may actually have information that you can use. And then learning, finally, paying attention to your customer segments, learning what it is that they want to hear from you, maybe giving them options that you're not going to send them your company newsletter because they don't want extra junk, but they do want to know about product improvements or other issues. So you give people an option as to what they can what they are interested in receiving. In doing that, you're customizing your sort of your handshake across the internet, if you will. You're customizing your handshake so that you can create a better relationship with customers and focus on them. And of course, that's where you learn from them on how to develop your new products. And we've had several shows on product innovation and that sort of thing too. So I would suggest you might look through our channel, and if that's interesting to you. So that's where I see a major emphasis is to make sure on your list for 2024 that you really focus on what can a CRM do for your business today. So there's that. Ray, you're on mute.
That was a good introduction. Ed, I'd like you to kind of talk a little bit about the value of a strategy and a plan, since that's been really a backbone of your practice for many years.
Yes, thank you, Ray. Looking at 2024 outlook related to technology and how it can be enhanced to better serve the family business, one of the things I think is really important is integrating all the different various systems that you're using. So you're getting information from all aspects of your business that comes into the command center, and you can process it. Because the better the information you have and the more timely that you get it, the better your decisions are going to be and the better job you're going to be able to do to operate your business. And that's one disadvantage that a small guy has compared to the big guys, because the big guys have all these sophisticated systems that give them information online, real time. And so they have complete data that what's out there related to their business, so they can make better decisions. So I really believe in the integration part is very important for making better decisions. Also, being able to find things quicker. I'm 69 years old, and sometimes it takes me a while to find things. And then when you throw my wife into it, both of us try to find the same thing. It could take hours. So being able to find things quicker really would be helpful, which means a lot of times some of these systems are so sophisticated, it's so hard to operate, and there's no education on how to operate them. We're missing a big opportunity there, because simple is better for most people, and it's going to drive more people to utilize the systems if they're simple to use. And I have several clients that are so sophisticated on how they handle their business that they make it very, very complicated, and the average person in the company can't use it because they don't understand it. And there's no specific training basically to teach them how to use it. And there's no integration, which makes it even more difficult, because you get information from one system and then you got to write it down or do a printout, and then you got to follow it through another system. It's just not a good way of utilizing your resources. So I think the big opportunity could be for everybody is for guys like John Burgess, who's very intelligent in this area, could teach some of the older generation how to use some of these, some of this technology that's out there, and that could have a significant impact on their business.
Yeah, John, that's a good segue, Ed. John, given your experience as a chief operating officer in a manufacturing organization, how do you see technology being of value at this point, and which ones might you recommend?
Well, Ron and Ed both they did a good job of segueing into it, because what I was going to talk about was a little bit different, but it definitely came from the idea of the challenges in the supply chain and manufacturing, and we've saw that over the last few years, and that technology definitely is part of that. I think the B2B business, industrial businesses are always lagging. And so for 2024, what I see happening is complete chaos in a way that has happened every couple of generations. I was thinking the personal computer came out in the early 80s, and you'd say that first 4 years of the Reagan administration, from 80 to 84, there was so much change. At the end of 84, I remember my dad bought my brother and I a Nintendo. So, it went from no computers to Nintendo in the house within 4 years. We're coming into this new data age that is just mind-boggling. And I've spent the last few days really diving into stuff. I've gotten a lot deeper into Twitter. I've been trying to retool my brain to some old content creation ideas that I've been doing for 20 years, but took those couple years away. So I took a step back. I've been telling everybody I don't understand what's going on with the markets. The markets are crazy. It doesn't make any sense. At the manufacturing levels, we don't see the increases in sales. We don't see the increases in usage of supplies. Inflation's baked into that. So you have these complex issues. And so here's some things that have happened recently that will lead into really where I think we're headed. Since 2010, we're down 10% in going to college. And that does not include the last couple of years that were affected by COVID, but it might be less. So we have a lot less people going to college. It's been more than 5 years since a U.S. native-born increase in jobs. And by that, unemployment's gone up and down. But since July of 2018, there have been no new jobs created for born in American Americans. So we have these jobs coming in from overseas. That really makes you wonder, is it low-level jobs? Is it high-level jobs? Are these people coming into tech sectors, into healthcare? Or are they coming in to work at a factory? And so that's an interesting little thing. Payrolls have been up and down. We see unemployment going down in some ways, full-time employment, but we see the highest level of all-time and part-time employment, or having two jobs. We're at 8.4 million people have two jobs. So it's a very weird thing going on. So you always go back to the basics, and we were just talking about on Wednesday about the 80-20 rule. And so you go look at it. Let's figure this out. Well, this is where it starts. There are 8 companies that make up the most of the S&P 500, and that's Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Nvidia, Google, and Tesla, and Meta, Facebook. Google has a Class C in there. So really, it's 7 companies. They account for 27.37% of the index. They're only 1.6% of that index. So it's 1.6 to 27%. The 80-20 rule has been blown up. That means 98% of the companies make up 72%. So we have an 80-20 rule that's been demolished. And so why has that happened? Well, it's people spending time online. It's creation of content. It's the uses of those companies. And as you notice, all 8 of those companies, 7 of those companies, they're technology companies. So we have production of the item, the phone. We have the technology that went into the phone. We have the buying power that goes through Amazon, Google. We have, creation of cool things. Tesla is a technology company, but they make cars. So they're manufacturing / technology. So an interesting crossover there. But, so is Microsoft, so is Apple. So you have these interesting leaders. And what they are really doing is breaking what we thought of technology with all these new things, which includes AI. And so this year into maybe the next 2 or 3 years, we're going to see the shift from the idea that you go to college to get an education. You're going to go to YouTube to get an education. You're going to find out that you can find a nice niche, a place to work, a job, because of these tasks that you can learn online, these tricks of any trade. And we're going to have this interesting consumable economy driving the next steps of the economy, which in small business are what Ron really mentioned. It's how do you build a relationship with your customer and keep it? That's a CRM relationship-based thing. It's what Ed said, that you have to find the solutions that tie together so many moving parts now. And so how do I tie my marketing plan together that could include Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Google? How do I tie that into who comes into my store? How do I tie that into my accounting systems? How many products did I sell? What was my revenue? How much money do I make? It becomes more and more complex. The really interesting, I guess, future looking piece of 2024 and future is there's so many tools to do it for you. And it's unbelievable how quickly AI is going to make some of these really hard tasks kind of easy. And to Ed's point about, you're a little older and you haven't learned all these tools, there'll be some solutions to help you do that. And it's a kind of a jumping into these pools. And so I think the next few years will be no different than the early 80s of it changing from paper to, all of a sudden you have a personal computer and a printer. It's going to be pretty shocking how quickly it changes. And it's because our technology is in our hands already. And maybe the unfortunate part of all this is I had to look up. I said, well, this is an undercurrent to the economy. Yes, we know Apple's huge and Microsoft's huge, but why? What are they doing? It's the amount of time people spend on their devices. And it was really high. I found two stats. In 2021, it was pretty damn high. The average US person spent 8 hours, 5 minutes online. That was during COVID, so maybe it was a little high. So it did come down in 2023. Second quarter of 2023, it was at 6 hours and 41 minutes. So we are consuming services, whether it's a Zoom call like this, and we're having a business meeting on technology, whether it's Microsoft and we have 365 online where we're going into the cloud, or you're just sitting at home and you're watching a YouTube on how to do something, or you're just binge watching like you would a TV. So much of the economy is now baked into technology. We don't see it like a factory. You go to the factory every day, what's going on by how many heads are there, what the output is, how many deliveries are coming and going. You don't see it within technology, whether it's, streaming on the phone, on the computer. And that's where I think the real changes are happening. And 4 years from now, we'll laugh at how hard things were. It'll be totally easy. We'll have all these little assistants on our phone doing things for us. It might be creepy and it might be hard. And some of us will throw our hands up and say, it's just like the fax machine. We need to throw it out the window and get rid of it. But that's what's coming. And so to kind of finish it up, Ray, the big thing for 2024 is to embrace the change. I think that's really what you have to do. And if you're in small business, you have to go out and find sources, Twitter, YouTube, all these places to learn what the change is specifically in your industry. Embrace it, learn about it, and move forward because the content's there for you to do it.
Yeah, thank you. That was a good summary. John Mills, I don't know if you're able to hear this, but
I can hear this. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, we can. Give us some insights, from your technology background and how this all links together with what John and Ed and Ron have already said.
Yeah, so I don't actually disagree with anything that's been said so far, which is refreshing. The interesting thing is, 30 years ago, I was of the belief that technology was the facilitator of change. It was going to go and be the greatest thing that was going to affect our next 10, 20 years. And in a way it has been, in a way it hasn't. What I've discovered, and I think perhaps we were saying, and Ed, you kind of mentioned this in a pretty fundamental form. It's like, if I can't use the technology, how good is the technology? If I have trouble finding things, then I don't care how powerful it is, at some point, it's not going to work. My point now is, I think technology is absolutely going through a transcending change. It's going through a quantitative shift. There's no question. I don't think AI is anything particularly great, except for it's just the next level of computational power that we're going to have to deal with. But what is important and has happened is that the end client is always a human being. And when we're dealing with human beings, that means the guys who are going to win are going to have the ability to have their interface, their system be easy to understand, be intuitive, and be totally acceptable. Because look, at the end of the day, all of this technology exists for only one reason. And that reason is so that human beings can relax more, do more work, be more efficient. I mean, it's built for the human being to interface with. So the guys who really do the best on the human interface side of it are going to win. Even if the technology is a little secondary, you're still going to use it because at the end of the day, you like it, it's easy to use, you feel safe with it, you feel understood. There's all these emotive words that wrap around. And yeah, the technology might not be quite as good, but still, it's very, very good. So my take on it is, yeah, the winner is going to be those people who are not in love with the technology. They're in love with being able to provide information, data in a manageable form, whether that's graph form or whatever that output is. So that's my takeaway on it.
I was going to ask one other question that kind of lurks behind all this. And, you know, with AI kind of emerging to take over so many rudimentary tasks and even more sophisticated one, how's that going to affect our labor pool? And what are people who are losing their jobs going to be looking forward to as we move forward?
Yeah, if you're asking me that question, I'm going to have one other comment on AI, and there was an old adage back down in the punch card days. Early on, it was GIGO, garbage in, garbage out, and I would just say that the biggest issue with AI is what is the root source of truth that you are using to develop your AI algorithms from, and there is the big differentiator between the various systems that are being used today. One of the systems apparently went to work and learnt New York Times for the last, I don't know, however long they've been in business. And all the truth that they based their stories on was the New York Times articles. Well, very obviously, that means that either New York Times was smart or it wasn't smart. Who knows? But so AI is going to definitely do some things faster, quicker, and better. But I think it's going to open up a phenomenal number of new jobs that will enable perhaps a more efficient workforce and a more educated workforce in some areas. I'm thinking at the end of the day, it's going to be a net sum. There'll be winners and losers.
Let me comment on that, John. The AI is, I really believe AI is going to really fundamentally make some changes, but you are 100% right. It depends on the learning set or the tools that it's been fed. And everybody has to remember that. We're going to have to learn that. And I use it several times a day now. So, I mean, I am like deep into using it on a variety of subjects. And one of the things I wrote about, and I just mentioned it recently in my last comment, authenticity is a branding mechanism that I believe is an important one. I wrote about it in my book, Finding Your Crack in the Market, as one of the differentiators for finding your crack in the market. And that is that people have a zeal for authenticity, whether it's going to an old-fashioned hotel that is authentic, or going to ruins that are authentic versus, say, going to Disneyland. So there are a variety of ranges there that we can talk about, but primarily the advantage here that I think applies to your comment is that if you're in a specific business and you are seen as being authentic, meaning you know the business, you know how to run your business, you know how to interface with your customers on that business, including all the technical knowledge, you have a certain authentic character that no AI will ever take away from you. So even if you use AI in the future in your business, you have to feed it your level of authenticity so they know, so you know, and they know who might use this, that they're getting, say, their HVAC information from, I don't know, we'll say Carrier or some other expert in HVAC. Whatever the subject is, you now want to know what was the AI trained on. So if you use AI, say, on your website to answer questions for customers in the future, Don't let them go out to the web and pull everything off and use New York Times to give you, the latest tips on saving money for your air conditioning. Don't do that. Go to the carrier website where they've done the studies, they have the engineers, and they've trained the AI on only the data sets that they know are true. This is a real potential boon for small business. And now we've been talking, John and I have been talking about this level of authenticity and expertise in the business for 20 some years now. And most small businesses don't really take it to heart. But most small businesses do have specific and expert knowledge on their topics. You got to use that. That's the difference. And so when you're talking to your customers, make sure they know this is your expertise. You study it, you know it, and that's a great differentiator. And I think that's a way to win in 2024.
Well, and I'll expand slightly. I think big AI, the big fights that we hear in the news about what they're learning, that's one segment. I think we can put that to the side. The tools you'll use as a small business person are going to be built into something else. You'll never notice they're really there. They're just helping you out.
Yeah.
And it will, I think John said it pretty interestingly that, technology is really at the end use a person's tool. And we've seen that computing power increase over time. The AI we will see in small business is a increase to that computing power. And I think he hit it right on the mark that, in logo design, we might have used to, back in the day, spend hours and hours designing logos, charge $5,000-$10,000 maybe because the client wanted this and that. Well, my wife can make a logo on Canva on her phone in 3 minutes and be done with it. And she can be almost right with it and send it to me and say, John, I couldn't get this right. And I'll import that into Adobe Illustrator and I'll use its AI and finish it in another 3 minutes. And so in 6 minutes, I have a new logo. And that's the kind of computing power and speed that will be built into a lot of tools. And I think most of the small business tools will not be biased. It won't be that. It will be, in Ed's case, he'll have some clients that have some accounting stuff on pieces of paper, and the AI will figure out where it is and what account goes, and boom, it's done. And Ed takes a look at it and goes, oh yeah, only one thing wrong. Boom, done. It saved me, input time. And that's the kind of thing where it's going to help us out quite a bit, from energy management to, usage of raw materials to outputs to scheduling to these sorts of things. And so that's where I think the complexity or the big wall that a small business owner might have is like, where do I even start? Well, that's where you go to YouTube and start asking questions. You go to Google, ask questions, and get some people to give your industry solutions, because it'll be the nice little tools and tricks that are very AI driven, but not necessarily big AI.
Yeah, I'll add a real life example that I just ran into the other day. And that is that it was a pretty good sized proposal for services to a university locally. So as we're talking about, tens of thousands of dollars, it was not just a small, buy our widget. So the person who's writing the proposal used AI in order to write it, gave it instructions, and the proposal came out. Fortunately, it was being reviewed, and the reviewer realized that the closing statement was just ridiculous. It began to talk about, well, we will have mutual benefit by us working together, and sort of all of this team stuff. Ray, you love this. It was like a kumbaya, it's like, we're all going to be happy because we're all going to be great. Well, what's the truth? The truth is, if you buy this, we're going to make money. Okay. And the thing is that the buyer knows that. Forget the partnership. Sure, we're going to work with you. You're going to be a customer. We're going to do the best we can to do whatever it is that we need to do. But just tell them what the summary is and give them the price and say, we hope to do some business with you. Don't try and turn it into some sort of an AI mishmash thing. It would have sounded, had this gone out the way it was, it would have sounded ridiculous. Don't trust AI for important stuff.
So
Well, that makes sense, Ron. I think one of the questions that there's two things that I can take from this. One is this is going to be a tremendous era for people who want to start small businesses, because basically they'll have so much information available to them. The things that they couldn't conquer before are going to be conquered by AI. So it seems like the workforce is going to be moving away from working for a company to working for itself, even greater than it has in the past. Do you guys see that as well, or how do you see this now impacting the workforce in general?
Well, that's a
I-
great question, because the way I look at it, everything is going to change, and it's going to change quickly. So people doing certain activities now of their jobs, those activities might be done by the computer. So they're going to have to be retrained, and they have to have a thirst for gaining new knowledge so that they can take advantage of this opportunity. Sitting back and just waiting for things to happen is probably the worst option you can take. You want to learn more about it and figure out a way where you can leverage that knowledge and do something special and make a big contribution and grow your income.
I'll also say that it used to be that the owner, I mean, it's always been that the owner had to do the hustling, especially in a brand new business, do the hustling, get out and get it all done and try and get it all done. Getting it all done is always been close to impossible for every small business. And finally, it gets down to, okay, it's grown it a little bit. Now I can pay myself. Now I have to hire somebody. Everything always depended on new people. That's going to change, because instead of having to hire other people who, frankly, it's a real pain in many of the big states, a real pain to hire people, a real pain to try and maintain them. And it's a huge liability. They can sue you for anything they want to. So the trend is going to be, don't have employees and use other contractors. So if that's the case, you have to get really, really good at something pretty small and be able to offer that to other people who are contractors or self-employed themselves, get your help that way, and learn technology. Technology is the only way that you're going to be able to pull that off, because you've got to be able to do a little bit more with less labor. And of course, that's always been the secret to getting a raise. The only way you could afford to give union members a raise is if all the people worked harder and made more money. That's how you give raises to people, more productivity. Well, AI and technology increases productivity, which means you can give yourself a raise.
Well, I think you're right, Ray, on the assumption that we're going to end up with more of a content creation economy, or a gig economy, or a contractor economy. I've spent the last few days deeply diving back into Twitter, or now it's known as X now to us old people. I've had more conversations. I went back to my old ideas of, you always pat somebody on the back. That's the only way social media really works. And so I did it in this really narrow niche of monetization of YouTube channels. And so I wanted to know some of the tricks of the trade. And I've had 20 conversations in 2 days with people I don't know. And one of them, and I'll give him a shout out, Andrew, I'm going to butcher his name. He's from Russia. Chmerskit, I think is his last name. A young kid, left Russia, born after the wall fell. He's now in Slovakia or Slovenia or one of those other, Eastern Bloc countries, and wants to move west, whether that's into South America or North America. But man, he's got a little following. He's doing his own stuff. He's in the gig economy. He has perfect English. I had a 10-minute conversation through Twitter with him. And what the technology parts of this that have already opened up over, say, the last 5 years is really access to what would be the US economy, or the US/global economy, in ways where there is still some interesting outsourcing things. We're outsourcing this work on video work, or logo design work, or creative work to other people in other countries. And now they have the tools at the fingertips to not only make it pretty seamless, whether you're using a tool like Slack to communicate, you're using financial tools like PayPal, you're using variable cost tools like Gumdrop, where you can sell stuff online and you have no cost, except for maybe a 10% thing, or Amazon. The communication has been so improved that now you have emerging markets in what I would call the Eastern Bloc countries or Eastern Europe, India, China. These people are exploding with the opportunities because they can fill part-time jobs and these gig economy stuff where they have some real work ethic behind them. They have some want to grow a capitalist lifestyle to make money. They might have come out of a culture where that was not available to them, and they see that as quite a boon. So, Ray, I think there'll be a huge amount of it. And as I mentioned earlier, America has 8.5 million people that work 2 jobs right now. That's a big number of people. So it's a coming thing, and these tools are continually changing, so you can do that.
Well, I think that begs another question. How's that going to impact America? I mean, I think, as you pointed out, it's now the economy has been globalized in such a way that anybody can, like this person from Russia, can participate in the American economy. So the smart people will have an opportunity, and those who don't learn will be pushed out of the economy, even here in the United States. What's going to be the impact here?
Oh, I think it's going to be huge. I think you're on something there, and I feel this way based on a couple of conversations recently of recent immigrants to this country who are trying to set up their own shops, as well as conversations with John that he just kind of summarized for us. It's like the young people in America do not know what's going to hit them. They don't know how to work. They don't get up, get going, get out, put in their 10 hours a day, and they think they should have Monday and Fridays off. So when you read the issues that we're having with young workers today, American young workers are, and maybe in France too, I don't know, there may be some, but they don't recognize that they're not competing against their neighbor. As you say, Ray, they're competing worldwide against people who are willing to work from 6 o'clock until 10 o'clock at night in order to be able to build these networks, build the content, think of new ideas, because they're realizing they can make money by just creating content. And so some of these people, John, you told me about a guy who had 1 million views on a one, and what's the pay on that, John? How does that work?
Well, I was specifically looking at YouTube, and YouTube on average pays you per 1,000 views of your video if you get to the level of monetization. And the really interesting thing, and you go, well, how many millionaires are made out of Google? And yeah, there's some people that had some stock in it, right? And there's some millionaires there. I think, and I'm going to do some searching on this, but I bet you there's more creators that are millionaires because of Google than there are millionaires that were created from the Google creation or stock opening. And these Eastern Bloc, even Middle Eastern, kind of that Dubai area, Indian, these people are so hungry that not only can they make some money. Let's say they make $1,000 US. That's big for them wherever they're at. But these guys are making millions of US dollars. I mean, they're driving around in Bentleys, and they're doing stuff that's just shocking. And it really has to do with outsmarting kind of the old American way. It, to me, feels like 240 years ago. You have this revolution in America, and we're breaking away from the system of England and whatever that was. And we're all given the opportunity to own land, have some assets, and from those assets become real capitalists. Well, post breakdown of the Soviet Union, you now have this new world that's finally emerging after 10 or 15 years. And this new generation of Gen Zs, a little bit of Xs, Gen Ys, that were born into Soviet Indian countries with technology, now are taking major advantage of it. And so we're seeing a real change in the markets. And that's where, as I open, I don't quite understand why our markets are so strong, but part of it might be this undercurrent of technology users who are not necessarily here in America. They're not producing anything in America. They're not a factory, but they are creating some very, very valuable content, or they're doing stuff that is being consumed in such a way, whether drop shipping of a product or creation of new products, that's just quite amazing. And it's easy to see with a couple of all-stars in these games. You know, there's some people that are the top people, and now they're doing product, you know, creation off of them. But really, it's the next level down where they're making what they call faceless YouTube channels, where it's not their face. They're not famous. They're just making better content. And so there is something there. And it does come back to technology is useful, that these new tools are continually improving, that, to John's point, technology is being more efficient every single time with more computing power and more of this, that, and the other thing. And even if you're a poor kid in Dubai that is trying to break out, you know, you have translating tools to make your English sound perfect, or make the person on your video perfect. And therefore, they don't know you're in a little, you know, a hut with a cell phone, which is what these kids are doing.
I wanted to just add a little bit to that, John. You know, the truth is what's happened is that we've made the American economy available to the entire world without any of the costs.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy in India doesn't live in a hut. He lives in a mansion that he could not afford here, and he doesn't have to go here anymore. He can, America now, the idea of being here to be free is no longer relevant in that sense.
That's a deep thought. It probably is very true. And, you know, the globalization, whether it's, you know, you spent some time in Vietnam, and, you know, that economy is a communist country, but the economy is hopping, and they're doing it on the back of the American economy. And that's what China has done. But you're right. The idea of, in my mind, of capitalism has always been, I have an asset, I'm going to risk it by making something more out of that asset, whether it's time or my trees I'm going to cut into lumber. This next version of the economy is that you don't have to have a capitalist asset you're putting to risk. You're not capitalizing anything, but you are jumping into a stream of flow that you're capturing a little bit of that water or something. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, this has been a good conversation. I think this is something that we could obviously discuss at length. What I would like to suggest is we kind of wrap this up, but keep talking about this, because I think there are certain influences that are happening now that are very consistent. When we look back at, we talked about 1924 and, you know, the automobile, and how everybody was afraid that, you know, it would completely destroy the economy, and yet it created so many jobs that it really pushed forward the economy in ways we hadn't even anticipated. And I think a lot of that's going to happen today. It seems like we all kind of concur that AI is frightening, but it also can be illuminating and transform America. And I think the scary part is that, as you were alluding to, Ron, what's going to happen to our younger people who have always assumed that they could take advantage of this piece of property they have, the assets, as you said, John, and it's no longer going to be relevant.
It'll be interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting times coming in 2024 and beyond.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you, guys. Ed, do you have anything you want to say before we wrap up?
No, I just thought this was a phenomenal topic to discuss, and it's the wave of the future, and everybody has to figure out how to leverage this new technology to make it work for them. And small businesses definitely got to make an investment in it to know more about what's going on in their plants and how to sell to their customers.
Yeah, it's amazing. John, do you have anything you want to conclude with?
Yeah, I just think that being quick on your feet in this time, the unintended consequences of the advent of AI coming in and really changing the landscape. I don't think any of us really know what the finite changes are. We can all guess and postulate, and we're probably 50% right. But I think to be on track in your business and to be really keeping track of what's going on is going to be critical. So I think it's going to move fast, and corrective actions will be needed by a lot of companies.
Absolutely. Well, gentlemen, this was a good conversation. Thank you again, and I look forward to catching up again next week.
Take care.